Hey everyone, Assemblymember Kalra is in the middle of arguing for his own bill right now. So we're waiting just a few minutes for him. I thought I'd give some context around why this is an issue that keeps coming up in the campaign, something that we want to focus on, particularly now during COVID. Again, for those of you that missed the long-winded explanation of public banking I did a few months back, essentially what we're looking at is a financial institution, a bank, provides loans, and it happens to be controlled by a citizen oversight board and owned by a local government. That could be a city or a county, which was what AB 857, the legislation myself and a bunch of other amazing activists and organizers worked on last year, which passed and was signed into law, or this year, AB 310, that is focused on a state level public bank. Obviously, we're going to talk a lot about AB 310 when our guest Assemblymember Kalra jumps on. So again, I was going to give a little context while we wait. A public bank set up in a way that you have socially responsible goals associated with its lending is really the main purpose. We know that over and over again, Wall Street banks have come after the wealth of our community. 2008 financial crash absolutely happened because banks were taking advantage of people, giving them loans they knew they could not pay back, working with insurance companies to bundle that risk, and then both of them would make out like bandits until the day came when that risk was too heavy. People started defaulting on the loans that they got, and everything came crashing down. We had to go in and bail out the banks so that they could continue to fund the things in our community that they need, or that we need, sorry. Right? Continue to fund mortgage loans, continue to fund home loans, small business loans, etc. We've got a special guest here. I want to bring on Assemblymember Miguel Santiago, who is the co-author of last year's bill, AB 857, and the co-author of this year's bill, AB 310. Assemblymember Kalra asked him to jump on, help us explain a little bit about the bill. So here he is.
Hey, thank you, Jake, for having us on. This is a big deal, and we're really excited to have. So I don't know how many people are listening out there, but I would give you a round of applause for making this happen and working extremely hard. Because when people first heard of this idea, they were resistant to it. But you're one of the first people who are out there championing it, working extremely hard, and convincing people. And here's the interesting thing about it. When we did last year's bill, it was one of the only bills ever in the history of the state legislature that got done without any lobbyist. Taking about how important that was. It was when people talk about people-powered movements, this was a people-powered movement in the legislature, and we beat back Wall Street, and we were able to establish local municipal banks. And this year, we doubled down on our efforts by saying, hey, we should actually have a state bank, and it's more needed now than ever during a pandemic. And this pandemic is going to last for some time, and we all know that until there's a vaccine or there's a cure, and both are not available right now. But we know that we need to have one. But until then, we've got to deal with this COVID economy, and we know how critical it is. Small businesses are not getting the loans from the federal government. People are hurting; they can't pay their rent or struggling to put groceries on the table. The federal government is not talking about not renewing the $600. We in California are stepping up and trying to make that $600 happen. But nonetheless, so what we really need now established is a conversation about a state bank. And there's multiple ways to get to that point. Well, we began the conversation this year.
Let me hold you there because we have Assemblymember Kalra in the waiting room here.
Bring him on board. Yeah.
There he is.
All right.
Yeah. Glad we could make this work. And I'll throw it back to you, and we'll go from there.
Hey, before
Well,
we call him
hey.
AK-47.
No, it's 27. My
47.
district's 27, AK 27.
27, sorry.
Anyway, I'll let you continue, Miguel, but thank you so much for pinch hitting as I was presenting. We have talk about a special guest, the author himself. So continue, Miguel, with what you were saying.
Yeah. Well, here's the bottom line. We need to reimagine the way we do the banking system because this is not working for folks. We have great work done by community banks, good work done by credit unions, but the big banks have failed us. And when we take a look at the interest and the fees that we pay to big banks, those monies are better used in our local communities. When we talk about affordable housing, we always talk about the lack of capital. Could you imagine a place where a bank mission is actually to do affordable housing? We don't have that right now. And what's interesting about the way we set it up is we're saying money that is idle in the treasurer's office today was about $100 billion any given day. We started off with a modest amount to say, we'll take 10% of that, $10 billion, and let's use it for something different. Let's use it to allow local municipalities to borrow money so that they don't have to do major layoffs and they don't have to cut critical services. Let's use that to spur affordable housing. Let's use that to do the things that we've always wanted to do in our neighborhoods, parks, to make sure that our climate is doing well, that we have clean water. Look at a low or no interest loan. So there's a way to do it. We heard it this week. The huge win, and this is a huge win, is that folks are taking this serious and that we've got a commitment from the chair of Senate Gov to actually take this issue with us and work with it on next year. We applaud the efforts, State Controller Yee. We applaud the efforts, Treasurer Ma, who have agreed to sit down with us and work towards getting to that goal. And these are huge steps and big wins. And look, I will tell you, we couldn't have done this without Kalra. Because look, this guy has been steadfast from the very beginning when we didn't have very many supporters, and we sat back and we said, how are we going to get this through? There's an army of lobbyists who have been paid, to kill this bill last year. Jake was one of those guys who said, "Nah, we could do it." We looked at Jake and said, I don't know, Jake, man, you better eat your Wheaties. But he did. Osh did, and we doubled down and got it down this year. So we've got a road ahead next year. We're gonna need all the firepower and all our allies. So we're counting on you, Jake, to help us to bring people to the table and make this happen. But we're going to do this, folks. We're going to do this, just like the Bank of North Dakota. We're going to do this.
Yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, I remember us setting up our meeting with Osh. We were super excited. We knew he had talked about it in the past. And so we were really hoping that the way that AB 857 was presented and the direction we wanted to go, just focusing on municipal, county level, was going to catch his attention, and it did. Thank you very much for jumping on very early for that. And then so excited. In all honesty, I've been slightly out of the loop from AB 310, a campaign I'm running. So it was awesome to see.
You're very modest. You've been in the loop the whole time, but it's okay not to be modest sometimes. I'll say it for you. You've been a serious contender to make sure that this happens for us. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll throw it to Ash. Explain a little more specifically AB 310. We've got a question here from the audience that will answer. So how do you confirm that this state bank is egalitarian? And I know there's some language in there about who it loans to that'll help with that.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I really do want to thank Miguel again for jumping in and talk about, again, a very special guest as the leader in this movement in the Capitol. And then we have leaders like you, Jake, outside the building throughout the state that have been working arm in arm with Miguel. And so I'm just honored to be part of it. And Miguel, you can feel free to jump in as well, but I'll start by saying, the status quo is certainly not egalitarian. And we know that. We know that, and we see it. We've seen Wells Fargo, other banks getting these major penalties that are a fraction of how much they actually took from consumers. And so I think that once you have it in the public realm, you have the opportunity to even have that conversation, because we know the private sector, the Wall Street banks, are not egalitarian at all. We do know that, especially in the first phase of the kind of meet the moment aspect of it, that of the money that will be coming down to the local communities, but to target some of the bridge loans specifically for some of the disadvantaged communities. And then in addition, to have resources for small businesses, particularly again in disadvantaged communities, small businesses that aren't getting the PPP loans, that aren't getting the federal assistance, to make sure that they're getting access to resources that they're not going to get from banks and haven't traditionally gotten from banks for many decades. And so that's how we can at least have the on paper aspect of it being egalitarian, but it's the transparency component and the accountability component that's going to make sure that in action it's also egalitarian. And that's the thing with a public bank. As many of you know, when it comes to public entities, where we have to be extremely transparent. And what that allows is people like Jake Tonkel and others to say, hey, wait a second, this is what you promised. You promised that you're going to have an equity program. You promised you're going to get the resources there. And then you get to hold folks like us in the legislature accountable. You get to hold the director of the public bank accountable. And so I think what it really allows for is us to have that conversation that we're all having right now in the streets on what equity means and what social justice means. And economic justice is inextricably entwined with social justice. So I think, I don't know if you want to add to ensuring the equity piece.
I think you hit it on the nail. I just add one thing. Look, its very mission is not profit driven. And that's the first point. Its very mission is to have a public benefit. And just to tie up what Ash said, it's the governance board too. You're not going to get high-powered executives looking to please stock shareholders. What you're getting is folks who are in elected office and or some other kind of commission governance structure, doubled down by the transparency that Ash talked about, I think gives you the ability to have better confidence in serving the public good.
And I would almost even correct you. I would say it's not short-term profit-driven, right? The goal is to look at the negative impact to our community that our local governments and our state governments are picking up the tab for.
That's right.
That's going to cost us more in the long run. This is how we, make a smart investment.
That's absolutely right. And to that point, Jake, when I was on the city council, we would go to the private sector. We'd go to Wall Street banks to get financing for our bonds, to get financing for infrastructure. And we're literally giving taxpayer money for profit of the Wall Street banks and for finance fees and interest, you name it, and paying it over many, many years. So you're 100% right. It's not just a win; it's a double win, because but not only are we contributing to our community, finding ways to lift up small businesses, finding out ways to ensure that our local communities can get those resources, but at the same time, we're not giving taxpayer money for many, many years when you talk about the interest debt to Wall Street banks. And so it's absolutely a double positive scenario.
Yeah. And
Jake,
on that note,
in the committee and vote, but I wanted to.
Hey, thanks for getting in here, Miguel.
No, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
But thank you very much. Keep up the good work, Jake. We're going to see you up here lobbying, and everybody else who I cannot see on here, we're going to expect you to double down, and we're going to get this done. Thank you.
Absolutely.
AK27.
Thanks, Miguel. Hey, thanks, man.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for jumping in. Appreciate you. So that was very cool, Miguel, to jump in. As you heard, he's in committee hearings. I just presented before Senate Labor, and I presented a bill, the AB 2231, that ensures whenever.
Oh, we lost him. Assemblymember Ash Kalra, always on the go.
Okay, so whenever there's a government subsidy to any private developer of 2% or $500,000, that they have to pay prevailing wage. And so, as we saw in San Jose over the last couple of years, a couple of years ago, they gave $67 million away to private developers in public. Yeah, it was last year. So in public, in fact, it was last year because I brought this bill forward last year, and it happened while I was trying to get this bill through the legislature. And no strings attached, no prevailing wage, and we want to prevent that from happening anywhere in the state. If it's taxpayer money of any significant amount, which we believe $500,000 or 2%, either way is a significant amount of taxpayer resources, that they must pay prevailing wage. And so that's the bill I just presented before the Senate Labor Committee that I'm hoping will get to the governor's desk, by the end Get it by the end of this month. Get it over on his way.
Fingers crossed. So appreciate you, focus on that work and then come in and do the educational piece. Help us talk with people in the community. You're always busy.
I do want to remind folks that I believe your opponent voted in favor of giving that multi-million, tens of millions of dollars subsidy to private developers with no strings attached, no affordable housing, no prevailing wage. Just want to remind folks of that.
There is a big difference in the way we see our ability to command the resources our community needs from people that are doing well. I think that's a big piece of it here. It's a big piece of AB 310, the bill you're working on. Most policy that I see come out of your office, that's really the driving force for it, if not all policy. So again, thank you for that. Because the viewers are probably more focused on City of San Jose, you touched on it a little bit, but would love to have you comment as well. We talked about small business loans targeting our underserved community. How would this help the City of San Jose specifically during our COVID emergency and the economic recovery?
Well, if you think about it, the City of San Jose, the County of Santa Clara had the pool resources in many cases from the private sector, from foundations or private companies to try to kind of pull together some money to give these bridge loans or to give these grants to small businesses. And that money ran out very quickly. Now imagine if they can go to the state of California that has $10 billion that they can give to local communities to help offer bridge loans to small businesses or grants that the city can then pay back at low interest, or municipal bonds below market rate, all in order to get resources to help families get through a crisis like this. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the state being a partner with local communities, a partner with cities and counties, so that they don't have to go to Wall Street every time with their hand out at exorbitant interest rates and fees and begging that they have the credit rating in order to help their communities out. In this case, they would come to the state. This is their money. It's public money. It would be part of the public infrastructure bank and the infrastructure account, and we'd make it a public bank eventually. And we'd be able to help small cities because we're not getting the help from the federal government, and the state cannot print money, and we can't go into debt. But this is existing funds that won't affect the California state budget, that allows the cities to leverage it in order to assist small businesses and families get through this crisis, and allow cities to get through this crisis. We already see the hole that the city of San Jose is in. Imagine if they can, instead of going to Wall Street to kind of to loan or to put out bonds to get through this crisis, they go to the state for below market rate issuance of municipal bonds, or they get a bridge loan from the state that they can pay back over a number of years that goes back into the state coffers for future needs of local jurisdictions and infrastructure, right? I mean, it makes so much sense. And the only reason why it doesn't happen is that we have privatized so much of our public sector responsibilities. And financing is one of them. Financing is something that we can easily do in the public sector. Our city, the state, county, we all have finance departments that have very capable people that can monitor this type of process. And again, to Miguel's point, to Summer Santiago's point, without the need of giving profit to the private sector.
Yeah, I think one of the other really important things that this does for the state of California, it's a little bit of independence. I mean, the federal government is only offering municipalities like 6-7% interest rate loans for them to cover their deficits right now.
Yeah.
And the state bank, if created, is looking at like 1.2%, 1.5%. So definitely significant savings for us over a 30-year loan. That difference will be hundreds of millions of dollars.
That's right. Absolutely.
We've got one or two cool questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure.
Alex Lee, who hopefully a future coworker of yours. How do you imagine City of San Jose benefiting from a public bank? I mean, we touched on a couple of things, right? Yeah. The ability to keep workers around so that we're investing in ourselves.
That's right. Yeah, and to help San Jose get through its short-term deficit, right? If they have projections that say, okay, we're going to be hitting a downturn for a couple of years, but we don't want to lay off our entire workforce because that's really that's slashing public services to the community. We don't want to lay off firefighters. We don't want to shut down parks and close libraries. Let's go to the state bank to help us get through this process, get through this difficult time together. It allows the state to have the resources in order to do that. And I really look forward to Alex joining me in the legislature, because obviously he will be another champion of this. And we need it because, again, we don't know. We're going to fight like heck to get this through this year. We don't know if we'll make it through this year, which means we're going to need Alex by our side next year. And even if it does get through this year, we're going to need to have follow-up legislation and administration and oversight to make sure it's done in a way that's equitable, to make sure it's done in a way that is actually benefiting the public.
Perfect. With that, we've got a question from Terry. What can we do right now to help support AB 310?
Certainly. Well, right now it got through its first committee, and it got through its first Senate committee. So it's going to go to Senate Appropriations. And so you always start with your own legislators. So let your legislators know, both your assembly member and senator, that you support it. Let the Senate Appropriations Committee know. The chair is Portantino, but you can send kind of like a CC and send a message to all of them, or send individual messages to all of them. Connect with folks like Jake, who are connected to the network throughout California for that supports the California Public Bank. And what that does, then it'll put you in the loop with a movement that is organizing already. So they may have either social media or phone calls. They might have these actions that they're doing to show how much of a mobilization there is around public banks. So you certainly want, and I'm sure Jake can help connect all of you with that. And so right now is the time. The thing is, we're in a very shortened, because of COVID, legislative cycle. We only have 3 more weeks after this. And so it's go time now. There's no more time to waste. We usually have months to kind of lead up to where we are now. We just had a herd. It's going to move super fast. And so do whatever you can. You see the ab310.org. That has a lot of ways you can help. Sign up for that, and they'll definitely keep you in the loop.
Perfect. Well, I won't keep any more of your time. Absolutely grateful for you coming on, making the time to speak to everybody.
Absolutely.
Grateful.
Jake, I want to say I'm thankful to you because, as Miguel said, we wouldn't be here without you. We wouldn't be here without you and a network of advocates. And when I say a network of advocates, I don't mean like you just made a phone call or two. You guys were lobbying me. You were lobbying folks throughout the state. You were showing up in Sacramento. And we need to have that voice in the city of San Jose. We need to have that same energy on the city council to fight for a public bank, because right now we have legislation that allows local jurisdictions to go forward, but coupled with AB 310, then you can have the resources really to allow it to flourish. And so thank you for all your advocacy. I'm so excited about you running for city council. I fully support you 100%. And this is one of many reasons why, because we do need a state public bank and we need public banking in San Jose.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Kalra, everybody. We're going to make this happen. I mean, November is going to be an extremely exciting time for the city of San Jose, for California, hopefully for the country. Yeah. And we're going to be able to move into our COVID recovery in a much more equitable way when we get the progressive champions we need in elected office. So happy to have your support, and take care. Good luck on everything else you're probably taking on tonight.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks, man. Take care, Jake.
Bye.